You probably just wish you would explode bosses with a ranged DPS, don't you? What? Oh my god! How could I have not seen it? This is the answer! And all you need right now are talents, gear, essences, and rotation to start bursting some mythic bosses and raids. Oh my god, that Boomkin damage! Starting our talk with the talents, we have two options on the first row. When raiding, you want Nature's Balance for a much better sustained astral power generation. To be fair, the other options are intended to assist you with astral power generation as well, but are not as optimal. However, when doing dungeons, Force of Nature is the way to go. You get astral power from it of course, but what you're really looking for is the taunt ability they have. You'll notice as you go through this video that Balance Druids have a lot of utility, and although the numbers they can dish out are super good, the utility is probably the main reason you will be taken into Mythics. So make sure you use your kit properly. As such, Force of Nature should be used to relieve pressure from your tank, especially in necrotic weeks. Second row is the utility row, and my utility rule is that if you can get the maximum advantage out of it, use it. As such, I do recommend Wild Charge for both Raiding and Mythic Plus. Mobility can save you from taking big damage and not to mention allow you to finish or squeeze another cast before having to move in the very last second. In our previous guide, we received a comment advocating renewal. I stand by what I said, use whatever provides you with the most advantage. I do want to mention and recommend you get into the mentality of dodging damage you can dodge as opposed to heal it. It's a lot healthier to play that way. The third row is another utility row. The options you have are between Resto Affinity and Guardian Affinity. I have looked at the top boomies in the world and do agree that the Resto Affinity is a much better option. Having on-demand heals can help in tough situations, especially in dungeons, but what's more important is the passive heal that actually tends to add up, which is considerably good since it costs 0 input on your part. Level 60 is yet another utility row. I told you, prepare yourself because you are the Batman utility belt of the WoW specs. In terms of rating, it seems that Typhoon will be the best bet. As opposed to last year, you won't get good usage out of Mass Entanglement, and Mighty Bash is even less of an option. In dungeons, however, everything is fair game. Depending on what the affix is, you can pick any option on this row. Level 75 is finally a DPS row. The main option to go with is Star Lord. It works amazing in both raids and dungeons as a constant haste buff that you have to manage, which spices up your rotation just a bit. There is an argument to be made for Incarnation for Mythic Plus, which I can also recommend. It provides very high burst damage for a fair amount of time, enough to clear any major pool or use in tyrannical weeks with dangerous bosses. You might need to communicate with your tank to pull this off properly though, or simply pick it as a reliable source of on-demand damage if Star-Lord is not up your alley. Level 90 row yet again brings two options. Stellar Flare is ideal for raids or essentially any situations where you want to optimize for high single target damage encounters. The dungeons or AoE option is Twin Moons that buffs Moonfire. Do not underestimate the power of Moonfire. Plus, being able to dot more than one target at a time is not only a quality of life improvement, but a DPS gain since you don't have to use as many GCDs to apply the dot. Last row, once again, two options. The raiding single target option again is Shooting Stars. Since it's passive, it gives you room to breathe and adapt to the encounter, not to mention maintaining Star-Lord with less pressure. The dungeon/burst AoE option will be Fury of Elune. It's no wonder Balance is doing so well and so many people love it. More classes should have this much diversity when it comes to their spec. Although you will want to take them as I mentioned them, the options are definitely interchangeable depending on what you want to accomplish and how you approach a specific encounter. The general stat priority for Balance Druids follows the next rule: haste on top, followed by mastery, then crit, then versatility. The strength of the stats are not that far apart from each other, and if you follow this priority, you should be okay. If you want to be amazing, however, you'll have to sim yourself to get the most out of your space chicken. As an example, my stat priorities are a bit different simply because I have a lot of crit. This is how they look for single target, and it's very interesting because they don't change for AoE either, as you can see. Most specs have different ways of gearing depending on their encounter, but balance is pretty consistent in that regard, which is a nice change of pace. And the consistency can be found further on into the trinkets. At least the best in slot ones, which are good for both raids and dungeons. As a rule of thumb, as you're gearing up, take the trinkets that match with your stat priority, meaning haste will be better, so trinkets that have haste procs are universally good. If you actually plan on aiming for the best performing trinkets, then let's see what your options are. First, and probably the easiest to get in the game, is the Highborn Compendium of Storms. This is made by inscribers everywhere and is not that expensive considering it has the most damage output out of all 400 eye level trinkets. The only other options better than this one are heroic and mythic Titan Forged trinkets, and only a few are simming better. No, really, get this one. It's a few thousand gold and you will probably never replace it this patch. The next ones are actually trinkets that drop from the raid itself. Leviathan's Lure and Shiver Venom Relic are two of the best trinkets in the game, and they can replace your 400 eye level compendium if you get them at their mythic level 445. Crazy, right? The Shiver Venom Relic drops from the first boss, while Leviathan's Lure drops from the Blackwater Behemoth, or the second boss of the raid. There are of course other trinkets you could use if you're not lucky with these ones. Basically, any haste proc trinket will be good, and if you're really not certain about what you have or what you can use, try to sim them, or simply visit websites such as herodamage.com, where you can see an estimate performance analysis about each one, whichever is better for you. Now we can move on to the Azurite traits. The build changed just a bit since 8.1, in that it's more consistent now and skews over to a trait we considered secondary back then, at least in terms of simulated performance. The main Azurite trait you want to stack 3 times no matter what is Streaking Stars. This trait operates when your big cooldown is active, which will be active a lot based on the next few options you will take. Every time you cast a spell that is not a repeat of the previous one, a shooting star will fall down on the target, dealing decent damage, and the damage will stack for each copy of the trait. Considering you'll be maxing out haste, you'll get more and more spells out that will scale better with this trait as the patch goes on. It will also affect your rotation a bit, but more on that later. The second trait you want at least once, and you can stack it if you don't have better options, is Arcanic Pulsar. This baby makes it so every 9 star surges you get 6 seconds of celestial alignment, on top of the added damage Star Surge will do. If you stack this trait, you'll only increase the bonus damage and not the proc chance and duration of the cooldown. The damage is nice, but might not be the best when compared to some other traits. Your other options when filling out are stat-giving traits, like the new Loyal to the End, especially if other members of your group have this one particularly. For secondary and tertiary traits, you want again stat-giving traits like Unstable Flames, and shielding ones like Resounding Protection. Do not underestimate the Resounding Protection trait, especially if you are tackling tough content. Before we move on to the essences, make sure to stop by our stream on twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline, where I test and practice specs and run Mythic Plus for footage, as you might have been able to see. Twitch Prime? Okay, thanks, bye. And for the essences, the meta seems to have established a bit. However, not everyone has their essences maxed at this point, so as always, test or sim when you're not sure what to use. For raiding, the major essence you want is Vision of Perfection. This one drops from the last boss in Mechagon and has crazy synergy with the Azurite traits you saw before. You can track your celestial alignments if you use Weakars, or the best add-on in the world, your eyes. Keeping track of when it procs, be it from the Essence or Arcanic Pulsar, will improve your performance. For the first minor trait and subsequent options, you can go with Memory of Lucid Dreams, Crucible of Flame, or Essence of the Focusing Iris. Essence of the Focusing Iris seems the best for me, and that's what I will recommend you take, especially if your haste levels are not that high. For Mythic Plus and situations where you want heavy overall AoE damage, take Essence of the Focusing Iris as your major. This option will give you massive on-demand burst, which can work against those very dangerous packs. For minor slots, choose between Vision of Perfection or Memory of Lucid Dreams. When it comes to minor essences, you have more options and freedom, and you don't need to restrict yourself on the list I provided. Try them out, see what works and see what you like, because certain essences have specific usage. Before we move on to the rotation, keep in mind this is a basic guide that aims to give you the foundation for boomies. If you want more in-depth and theory-crafted stuff, visit the Dream Grove Discord channel and talk with the Druids of Azeroth. Shout out to all of you lovely space chickens. Your rotation has two main resources you want to use without ever capping them. Astral Power is the first and most obvious one. You generate it mainly from Solar Wraths and Lunar Strikes and spend it on Star Surges and Star Falls. The second resource are the Empowerments that come from the passive with the same name, as well as the Eclipse passive. You can stock 3 for Solar Wrath and 3 for Lunar Strike, and you again want to consume them before capping them. So your rotation is basically a rotation between generating Astral Power with Solar Wraths and Lunar Strikes, consuming it with Star Surges, which in turn generates Empowerments, which in turn you consume again with Solar Wraths and Lunar Strikes. The first alteration you will do to the rotation is during your Celestial Alignment or Incarnation window, either from your cooldown or your traits or the Essence. You simply don't cast the same spell twice in a row. That's it. Thanks and have a nice day. Oh my god, that Boomkin damage, I'm so good! Wait, there's still more. The Arcanic Pulsar window is a bit different since it's a very short cooldown. Your main purpose is to fit 2 Star Surges in this 6-second Celestial window to maximize the damage output. To make sure you accomplish that, you need to stay at 8 stacks of Arcanic Pulsar until you go over 80 Astral Power. Then cast Star Surge, which will start the DPS window. Cast a Solar Wrath afterwards, followed by another Star Surge. Again, ideally another Solar Wrath or Sunfire if you have enough Astral Power, followed by the second Star Surge. This little window can differ from person to person and by how much haste you actually have. You might even be able to weave and consume your empowerments properly and still be able to fit 2 or more Star Surges. Now that you know what you want to be doing in general, let's check the opener. Before the pool, around 2-3 seconds, cast 2 Solar Wraths. You want to be at max range for this. Their travel time is slow and they shouldn't reach the boss by the time your tank pulls. Follow it with a Star Surge, then apply Moonfire, Sunfire, and Stellar Flare to the target. Pop Celestial Alignment, do a Star Surge, and then move on to the normal rotation. In this case, the Celestial window where you don't cast the same spell twice. For AoE, Starfall has received massive nerfs and currently it's almost a DPS loss if you're running Arcanic Pulsar and Streaking Stars, which you should always. You can cast Starfall on 7 or more targets, which seems to be the community accepted condition you need to meet. Otherwise, the AoE rotation follows the same guidelines where you keep Moonfire and Sunfire on all targets and be careful not to cap on Astral Power and Empowerments. Your stat priorities factor in when deciding what enchants and gems to get. Thankfully, you might never go wrong with haste, but if ever mastery starts simming more, then just replace the haste ones with their mastery equivalent. As such, start off with a Cord of Haste for rings and Quicksand Spinel Gem for your socket options. One socket though is always good to be used for the Leviathan's Eye of Intellect. Moving on to the weapon, you have 2 choices depending on your funds and gear. Machinist's Brilliance is ideal and best in most situations, while Quick Navigation is a flat-out haste boost that can work great if you have low levels of haste. If you open up a cold one with the boys, make sure it's the Greater Flask of Endless Fathoms, and for your pre-pot needs, get the Superior Battle Potion of Intellect. Lastly, for the food, the Feast is ideal, always, since it gives you more raw DPS with the intellect it provides. If feasts aren't always an option, then Baked Potato is a very good alternative. So fun, Baked Potato, it's fun to say. I know you like our sleek, sexy and clean UI, and you might think, how would one acquire such a thing? Well, fret not, because we have an 8.2 add-ons guide made by Marcelian who will walk you through a better tomorrow. Shout out to our Patreons for their support in these uncertain times. Thank you. And if you want to be part of our Patreon team and check all the little goodies, you have the details down in the description of the video. Get your swag on with MarcelianOnline and Warcraft branded merch. Click our Teespring down below and get your very own t-shirt, tank top, hoodie and mug, and no, one of these things is not like the other. Thanks for watching the video. Stay awesome.